Tonight, organized labor in Nigeria seeks additional 5 years to retirement age and years of service as they mark the 2023 Workers' Day. To stay relevant, be innovative. That's the consensus view of speakers to entrepreneurs at the 2023 edition of the Platform Nigeria. Nigerian students caught up in the crisis in Sudan are now in Egypt, preparatory to their flight back home following the intervention of President Muhammadu Buhari and his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. And of course, Russia continues to launch missile attacks on the Ukraine as the crisis continues.
On business news tonight, Central Bank of Nigeria says currency in circulation in the country has risen to 1.68 trillion naira in the month of March.
On sports news tonight, London's bragging rights are up for grabs again as Arsenal and Chelsea face off in a testy Premier League affair at the Emirates in less than 24 hours on Tuesday.
And from Abuja, Governor Abdullahi Ganduje defends the creation of the 4 new emirates in Kano State, maintains that it has come to stay to serve the interest of the people.
Workers all over the world are observing the day as Workers' Day, celebrated on the 1st of May every year to commemorate the struggles and gains made by workers and the labor movement. Now, moving on, where in Nigeria, the workers are asking for a review of the retirement age for all public servants from 60 to 65 years and years of service from 35 to 40 years. Well, the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Joe Ajero, and the president of the Trade Union Congress, Comrade Festus Osifo, presented the demands of the workers at the celebration of this year's Workers' Day in Abuja, where they also called on President Muhammadu Buhari to take steps to prevent those in his administration from looting the country's treasury as his government winds down. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
Colorfully dressed, beaming with excitement, Nigerian workers converge on the Eagle Square in Abuja for the commemoration of the 2023 May Day celebration. Over 50 labor unions are represented at the event, which has in attendance representative of the president, the secretary to the government of the federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, ministers of labor and employment, women affairs, and the federal capital territory, as well as the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election, Mr. Peter Obi. This year's May Day celebration focuses on workers' rights and socio-economic justice, which, according to the leaders of the labor unions, underpins the survival of the society.
Poor nutrition, increasing number of working poor, and restricted access to decent housing, health, education, combined to humanize and subjugate the rights of Nigerian workers, subjugating workers' rights, subjugate the entire society. We are therefore demanding that the age of retirement and length of public service, including civil servants, should be reviewed upward to 65 years of age, 40 years of service, whichever comes first.
Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party also addresses the gathering.
All we want is a country where we will be the country where Nigerians will be proud to say that they are Nigerians. A country where people will not be struggling to go out. A country where all of us, workers, will say they are working and they are happy. We can't get the economy right, we can't get everything right until the workers are working and are being looked after, their welfare and everything, and they are productive. That's why we say we're moving from consumption to production.
It's the last Workers' Day celebration to be commemorated under the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration, and as the government reflects on its performance so far in the area of workers' welfare, it emphasizes the need for continuity.
The federal government recently worked out the production of 40% workers' rights, imbued with socio-economic development and driven by the 4 pillars of decent work agenda to promote jobs and enterprise, guaranteeing rights at work, extending social protection and promoting social dialogue for consensus building and maintenance of industrial relationships.
The speeches are over and parades kick off. The International Workers' Day has been observed for more than a century, but in Nigeria, the day was first celebrated in 1980 in Kaduna and Kano before the federal government joined on May 1st, 1981.
This energetic and colorful display by the Nigerian workers is the icing on the cake for the 2023 May Day celebration, and it's a demonstration of their willingness and capacity to serve their fatherland, even as they continue to hope that the government will provide an enabling environment for them to thrive. From the Eagle Square in Abuja, Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
Right, let's now get a feel of the Workers' Day celebration or the May Day celebration across the country, where workers across northern Nigeria also join in the call for better working conditions, fair wages and improved benefits. But they made the call as they joined their counterparts across the country to celebrate May Day with the theme Workers' Rights and Socio-Economic Justice.
The Ahmadu Bello Stadium in Kaduna State came alive as workers in both private and public sectors joined their counterparts all over the country in a rally to celebrate Workers' Day with a demand for better welfare and improved condition of service. The NLC chairman in Kaduna State, Mr. Ayuba Suleiman, appealed to the incoming administration of Senator Ubasani to sustain the positives for the workers in the state.
Review of all cases of wrongly disengaged, arbitrary dismissal, forceful retirement of civil servants, and the consideration for their reinstatement and payment of their illegitimate entitlement, and improve industrial relationship through social dialogue, partnership, and collective bargaining. These are 8 years in this administration, and I think my comments can bear to that, that in these 8 years, we have never had our May Day, and the executive governor witnessed the way they omagged with us.
In Adamawa State, members of the NLC and TUC Adamawa State chapters, drawn from the civil service, private sector, and other voluntary organizations, converged on the Mahmoud Ribadu Square to mark this year's Workers' Day celebration. The governor of Adamawa State, Umaru Fintiri, who was represented by his chief of staff, Professor Maxwell Gidado, reiterated the state's government's commitment towards enhancing the welfare of workers in the state.
The Adamawa State government under my watch have always placed high premium on issues affecting workers, especially regular and timely payment of salaries, implementation of the 32,000 minimum wage and associated consequential adjustments, working conditions, promotions, career progression, retirement benefits, etc., etc.
Meanwhile, in Kano State, Governor Abdullahi Ganduje urges workers to continue to exhibit good discipline and to ensure honesty in their delivery of services. He told the workers that his administration has delivered dividends of democracy to the citizens of the state.
Enjoin all workers, the labor unions, and the entire citizenry to continue to exhibit high sense of patriotism and devotion to duty in the delivery of public goods to the good people of Kano State.
The
demonstration, doffing their cap to their profession and giving honor.
And in Taraba, the state government is asking civil servants to be patient as the processes leading to the implementation of the national minimum wage are still on course to better the welfare of civil servants.
Who won't laugh and say you did fine? Yes. That's the powerhouse of Taraba State.
Political activities are over. I therefore call on all civil servants to maintain political neutrality of the public service and give the incoming government support to succeed.
In Kogi State, the governor, Yaya Bello, assured workers that the payment of salaries in installments at the local government level will end in order to improve the welfare of the workers for optimum service delivery.
We have continued to pay 100% salaries to the state workers. Percentage payments persist at local government levels for well-known problems of overvoted workforce. We are doing our best to eliminate the challenge of percentage payments at the local government areas. And in this regard, we have continued to jack up our internally generated revenue in order to improve the payment and make it 100%.
This year's May Day celebration is the last under the President Buhari-led administration. May 1 is celebrated every year in Nigeria as a reminder of the important role that workers play in the country's growth and development. Victoria Longjohn, Channels Television News.
Still on the May Day celebration, for over 3 decades since 1981, Nigeria has continued to join the rest of the world to observe the first day of the month of May as International Workers' Day. International Workers' Day, otherwise called May Day, is promoted by the international labor movement to commemorate workers whose vital services keep countries and their businesses alive. Our next report looks into the plight of a Nigerian worker as they join their colleagues across the globe to mark the 2023 International Workers' Day.
May Day, also known as the International Workers' Day, is celebrated globally to appreciate workers who create the wealth for nations to thrive. Workers in various industries across the country also trooped out to commemorate the day, but not without a thought for the challenges they have to deal with in the workplace.
Workforce is the lifeline of the nation because it takes the workforce to build the structures, it takes the workforce to be in the hospital, it takes the workforce to be in the market. The Nigerian worker needs more than they currently get.
As of today, no Nigerian worker can effectively meet our family commitment and expenses. You cannot, to even go to work has become so difficult. The purchasing power of Nigerian worker has been depleted by galloping inflation. And the incessant increase in electricity tariff, incessant increase in transportation occasioned by fuel price hike, and everything has skyrocketed. So for average Nigerian workers, it's as if Nigerian workers are living corpse.
Remuneration is another major issue of concern for the Nigerian workers. The national minimum wage stands at 30,000 naira. At the time this became a legislation, there were excitements everywhere. However, this is not the case at the moment. It has become a far cry from their wishes.
If you gain 30,000, if it's in dollar, if it's in pound, you know that that's one of the strongest negotiations you can earn. But as you are earning it, and then inflation takes it over, and you devalue your naira, you know that it is now worth over $40. That's the problem.
What is being paid in some establishment will not even pay your transport to work in 30 days. But you have to eat, you have to clothe yourself, you have to live in a house. It is even worse because such wages are not even paid as are when due.
The employer-employee relationship in the public sector has never been an easy ride in Nigeria. It is one filled with lots of protests and demands for better welfare. Having to deal with basic needs like housing, health, and economic challenges has not been easy. However, the federal government believes strongly that it is doing its best to improve the plight of the Nigerian worker.
What I can tell you is that the Nigerian workers are patient. Their government also have been trying their best. The manufacturers, in spite of the harsh climate for industries, have also been trying their best, those in the private sector. I can also tell you that it's work in progress.
As Nigeria joins the rest of the world to mark this year's May Day, many Nigerian workers hope to see better working conditions and remunerations for their services.
In part two after the break, to stay relevant, be innovative. That's the consensus view of speakers to entrepreneurs at the 2023 edition of the Platform Nigeria. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Organized labor in Nigeria seeks additional 5 years to retirement age and years of service as they mark the 2023 Workers' Day. To stay relevant, be innovative. That's the consensus view of speakers to entrepreneurs at the 2023 edition of the Platform Nigeria. Nigerian students caught up in the crisis in Sudan are now in Egypt, preparatory to their flights back home following the intervention of President Muhammadu Buhari and his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. And at least 100 police officers have been injured in clashes across France, with protesters angry at pension reforms. Talking May Day celebrations across the country, and rallies were also held across the states. Besides the jamboree, it was time for sober reflection, stock taking, with a view for workers and the state governments to chart a better way to improve the welfare and working conditions of the workforce. This next report is a collation of rallies in the southern states.
The Mobolaji Johnson Sports Arena, or Nikon, Lagos State, a familiar venue for Workers' Day rally, is again packed with workers across the state.
Thank you very much.
The Deputy Governor takes the salute as the workers march past. Speeches centered on sectoral challenges and demands that require government's attention.
The proposed removal of fuel subsidy and the 40% salary increase. We want to implore the federal government to quickly do the turnaround maintenance of the nation's 4 refineries before the total removal of the fuel subsidy.
Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's goodwill message and response to workers' demands is delivered by his deputy, Obafemi Hamzat.
I wish to assure all our workers of our unwavering commitment to their welfare. We are mindful of the challenges of the time and will continue to provide the basic needs of our people and the right kind of leadership anchored on transparency and accountability.
In neighboring Ogun State, Governor Dapo Abiodun joins members of the state workforce to celebrate the day at the Moshood Abiola Stadium in Abeokuta. Workers in Oyo State converged on the Lekan Salami Stadium in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital. Governor Seyi Makinde expresses gratitude to the workers for their commitment and resilience, which he says has put Oyo State among the top 5 economies in Nigeria. as workers in Edo State join their counterparts to mark the 2023 May Day at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium in Benin City. Governor Godwin Obaseki sounds a note of warning on what may befall workers in the month of June unless certain actions are taken.
It will be a miracle for the federal government and state governments to pay salaries beyond June this year without resorting to massively printing money or removing fuel subsidy.
For their support for his administration, workers in Akwa Ibom State receive accolades from the state governor Udom Emmanuel, who will be bowing out as governor in a few weeks. As a parting gift, Governor Emmanuel promises to put in place a medium housing estate for workers before the end of his tenure. The 2023 Workers' Day is also observed in Cross River State. The parting gift to workers in Cross River State from the outgoing governor, Ben Ayade, is the announcement of the extension of retirement age and service year for teachers in the state.
Thank you very much,
In Anambra State, Labour leaders commend the state governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, for improving working conditions. Workers in Ebonyi State are not left out as they converge on the Pa Oru Tangele Township Stadium in the state capital, Abakaliki, to celebrate the day. In Imo State, workers rally at the Ndubisi Kano Square in Owerri, the state capital. The high point is the confirmation of a harmonious relationship between workers and the state government.
The leadership of organized labor, on behalf of Imo workers, adopt His Excellency, distinguished Senator Hope Uzodimma, as our candidate for the forthcoming Imo State gubernatorial election in Imo State.
Words cannot adequately express how much I cherish this particular endorsement, which I will see as the mother of all endorsements. I can only say thank you for appreciating my modest contribution to the development of Imo State and to the welfare of our workers.
Despite the challenges faced by the workers, they seem not to be discouraged to give their best in service to their states and the nation. Many are hoping that the incoming governments, both at the state and federal levels, will come up with new policies that will improve the welfare of workers. The secretary to the state government, Tina Banko, who represented the governor, also announces the lift of embargo on workers' promotions from 2016 to 2023.
As part of this year's Workers' Day celebration, a Lagos-based church, the Covenant Nation, organized its annual forum, the Plight of Nigerian, with the theme Innovating Our Way into the Future. The program had an array of speakers and entrepreneurs from diverse fields who took the stage to share their experiences. The various participants also had the opportunity to learn about talent building and pushing progressive frontiers for business owners.
The platform, just as the name implies, is one that brings together men and women who have excelled in their various fields to share their stories and inspire the youths to build personal capacity and productivity in the areas of business and governance, inevitably leading to national development. 16 years after, the platform has not lost that flair. And the first edition for this year has as its theme, Innovating Our Way into the Future. The convener and founder of the Covenant Nation, Poju Imadi, takes the first shot.
People must understand you can attain to anything that your heart genuinely yearns for. And for that to happen, you have to banish this thought or idea that God has His plan for your own life is less than your own personal aspirations. You can never outdream God. We live in a religious society where what really governs people at subconscious level is their perception of who God is. And you've got to understand that God as a person has a much bigger dream and vision for your life than you can personally aspire as an individual.
The conference holds twice every year, with thousands of attendees, and this year is no different, as other speakers give insights that entrepreneurs require in order to build successful businesses.
I think that we've gotten it into our heads that great companies are started by school dropouts and people that don't know much. But actually, 95% of people that started a billion-dollar company had a BSc. Almost 50% of people that have started a billion-dollar company had a master's. So for the people that are working in government listening, we need to invest more in education. We're not going to become an innovative country with the highest number of out-of-school children in the world.
Passion is important if you're going to be an entrepreneur, because you have to love what you're going to do. You have to, it has to be something that if they wake you up at night and they say, you know, come and do this and we're not even going to pay you, it's something you'll be happy to do. But at the same time, don't be passionately passionate about nothing. It does not make sense if you have something you're passionate about that is not providing value to anybody, that is not going to be a solution provider. Of course, it's not going to be a business. So I believe that yes, whilst you must pursue your passion, you must make sure that whatever it is that you're offering is something that adds value.
Entrepreneurship, on the other hand, is your ability to be able to see challenges as opportunities. You have to have the ability to see challenges as opportunities. You also have to have the ability to create a solution that can be packaged into a product and served to a clientele base that is willing to pay for it because they've seen value in it. So you must have the lens of seeing challenges as opportunities.
And then the mental pressure, you know, I think it was when Didi was speaking. And people say, yeah, it's good to be an entrepreneur, you get a salary, but there's a mental pressure that comes with it. And so I always tell people, discuss with people who've walked that path before. And don't do only that. See, it's a selfish entrepreneur. All you do is work. That office has provided a platform for you to prosper. You have to look for another platform to give back. It can be CSR, it can be mentorship. You have to look for another platform.
Just like in the past editions, the attendees will be taking away valuable lessons and business nuggets that they can apply to develop their personal and business lives. And it is safe to say they will be looking forward to the next edition, which comes up later in the year.
When the news at 10 returns, we'll have more on the annual forum, the Platform Nigeria, and Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says currency in circulation in the country rises to 1.68 trillion naira in the month of March. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We still have more from the platform, while other speakers also took out time to share their views on some burning issues in the country, ranging from entrepreneurship to the role of technology in driving businesses.
The big deal is the demographic advantage India has over China. It's a younger population, higher fertility rates, lower infant mortality. And so you put this together and then you see that they have a lot more upside in terms of economic development. In fact, there's another interesting statistic where the proportion of women in business or in the working population in India is lower than China. So huge upside. But then when you look at these things, it feels familiar, right? Because in Nigeria, we still have those same advantage, bringing it home here. So when you think about opportunities, you can't forget that advantage that we have, right? And specifically improving the quality of that capital.
America was built by business people. The things that you enjoy today, how many of them were built by government? People with vision, people with faith, people with courage forged a path. So the first thing that we must understand about innovating our way to the future is we must be willing to forge a path by faith and not by sight. It will look like bush today, but if we do the right things and we do what we should, in another 10 years, this is the story we would be telling.
People who decide that they want to become tech entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs need to go out, figure out the idea, create value, and start a company. But the technology is not going to run the company, is it? It is people like you and I that will run it. So therefore, you don't necessarily need to be technically inclined or be an engineer or what have you to work in technology. Technology businesses, they need to sell, correct? They need product people. They need content production. They need to market their businesses. All of these are roles in technology that are usually non-technical in nature, but there will be a global demand because guess what? People like you and I are creating value. And as long as we're creating value to meet the demand for technology skills out there, there would always be available jobs.
Let's now head to the nation's capital, and Gloria Umezoke is standing by to give us the very latest at our Abuja studios. Hello, Gloria.
Hello, Ayo. Thank you. Well, we'll begin here in Abuja with some cheery news as the National Association of Nigerian Students in Sudan said all stranded students in the war-racked North African country have been evacuated from the country's capital, Khartoum. The public relations officer of the association, Mr. Amal Pantami, made this known in a statement which reads in part, and I quote, "This is to inform the general public that all the remaining Nigerian students have been evacuated from Khartoum today, Sunday, 30th of April, 2023. There were 26 buses and each of the bus contained 50 people. We continue to ask for everyone's prayers and we hope that all the students are able to reach Nigeria safely. We're ever grateful for your continuous support and prayers," unquote. More than 500 people have been killed and tens of thousands of people have fled since battles erupted on April 15. Meanwhile, in a tweet by the chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, NIDCOM, Mrs. Abike Dabiri Erewa, the border has now been opened, albeit with stringent conditions. Mrs. Dabiri Erewa says this is as a result of the intervention of President Muhammadu Buhari and his Egyptian counterpart, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. The NIDCOM boss said processing of the evacuees by the Nigerian embassy in Egypt has begun, and the Nigerian Air Force is on standby to bring home the students who have been stranded for almost 4 days at the border. The governor of Kano State, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, says the 4 new emirates created by his administration are here to stay. Governor Ganduje gave the indication at this year's Workers' Day celebration in Kano. He adds that the emirates were created to honor the people of the region and recover the reputation of the traditional institutions.
Any of you that visits the headquarters of these new emirates will believe me that we have brought development to these places. These emirates were created for history. We created them to upgrade and promote our tradition. These emirates have honored the people in these locations. I assure you that these emirates are permanent. They have come to stay. Even if we are not in government, these emirates are untouchable. I promise you this, by the grace of God, they have come to stay.
The governor of Cross River State, Professor Ben Ayade, is advising the president-elect Bola Tinubu to focus on micro-projects that will have a direct impact on the people. This, according to him, is because of the hardship in the country. Governor Ayade was responding to our political correspondent, Terry Ikumi, on whether the Tinubu administration should continue with the social investment programs of the Buhari administration.
When federal government starts intervention program like Mother Comfort, conditional cash transfer, money market, all these programs intended to bring value to the poorest of the poor. In philosophy and principle, that's the way to go, because you have to lift people from extreme poverty, which has created extreme social deviation from norm. But how impactful those have been is a subject for a full controversy, because the population is far too huge for the interventions that come. So they become insignificant and just dilute into the system.
Is there insignificance in your state?
Yes, yes. I don't know of any person who has become self-sufficient occasioned by a social welfare program of any sort. Here is my advice to Mr. President-elect. Focus on the things that bring immediate value to the citizens. Shut our doors, which is isolationism, and ignore these international community ideologies. It's a thin line between the survival of this country and the conflagration. The carrying capacity of the citizens have reached its limit. There is extreme hardship. This is what I will advise President-elect to focus on. Agro-industrial, small cottage industries that bring immediate value, create jobs for people, create value addition, and spin off poverty and take out poverty. Phase 2, before you go to heavy industries, massive projects. Because if you don't get that point right, you'll be focusing on, oh, you want to see skyscraper streets, you want to see a bustling, super beautiful. No, it's the people first.
For the full interview, watch Political Paradigm on Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. The investigation panel set up by the Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has invited the suspended resident electoral commissioner in Adamawa State, Mr. Hudu Yunusa Ari. The panel invited Mr. Yunusa Ari over his conduct during the April 15 governorship election in Adamawa State. The Adamawa REC had stirred controversy by declaring Senator Aisha Binani of the All Progressives Congress as the winner when the collation of the results was yet to be completed. The Independent National Electoral Commission declared the announcement null and void and then summoned the REC to its headquarters in Abuja. Subsequently, the electoral umpire wrote to the Nigeria Police Force to prosecute Yunusa Ari over the electoral infraction. On April 20, President Muhammadu Buhari approved the suspension of the Adamawa REC pending the completion of an investigation by the police. A day later, INEC said it was not aware of the whereabouts of Mr. Yunusa Ari. Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to you, Ayo.
Many thanks, Gloria. The police in Imo State say they have arrested 9 suspected members of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra Ipob, who allegedly killed 5 officers and a couple in the state on April 21st this year. A spokesman of the police in the state, Henry Okoye, in a statement disclosed that operatives of the Imo command arrested one Matthew Chukuma at his hideout in Umuahia, the Abia state capital. According to him, the suspect confessed to being the sector commander of the syndicate of the Ipob and its militant wing Eastern Security Network in Mbese community in the state, and subsequently assisted the operatives in arresting 3 members of a syndicate at their criminal hideout while others escaped. Mr. Okoye listed the names of the 3 other arrested suspects as Ikechukwu Ojoko, Charles Chilaka, and Anthony Iwu, all indigents of Mokiria community in Ahezu Mbese local government area of the state. He adds that in the course of the investigation, the suspects all confessed to being members of the dreadful Ipob ESN syndicate terrorizing the people of Imo, and had a hand in the recent killing of 5 police officers and 2 civilians at Ngokbala. Time now for some business news with Anne Waldo.
Thank you, Ayotunde. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin with Nigeria's local currency, which in the circulation has jumped to 1.68 trillion naira in the month of March, reversing its downward trend. And that's according to data coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. The figures mark a 71.4 increase compared to 14-year low of 982.1 billion naira recorded in the month of February, indicating an additional 701.4 billion naira pumped into circulation in the month of March. Meanwhile, with rising concerns about the seeming disappearance of newly redesigned notes, the CBN in a statement assured that the supply of more quantities of the new notes to banks will happen soon. Reactions have continued to trail the suspension of the planned removal of subsidy on petrol products by the end of the Muhammadu Buhari administration. One is from energy lawyer Professor Damilola Olawi, senior advocate of Nigeria, who believes the continuation of subsidy will slow the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act.
But as you rightly noted, the PIA is meant to be supplemented by a wide range of other initiatives. One of them is the process of deregulation and elimination of fuel subsidies. So if there is going to be a delay in the implementation of subsidy removal, then it's going to affect the overall positive gains that we were hoping to see with the PIA. Don't forget that one of the thrusts of the PIA is to ensure that the petroleum industry works in a very systematic manner, devoid of artificial subsidy effects. So now that subsidy removal is going to be delayed, then we may see a slower implementation of the PIA itself. Getting subsidies is normally a politically charged process. And what we've seen in other countries like Indonesia and Qatar and many other countries in the Gulf, where they've implemented subsidy removal, is that it is normally through a phased approach. You don't just wake up and say it's done, a system that has been in place for many years. So you see.
Meanwhile, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, has criticized the federal government's decision to delay or suspend its earlier planned removal of fuel subsidy. In a statement signed by its Director General, Dr. Chinyere Alomona, the Chamber clarified that it is a great and urgent need for the government to thoroughly evaluate its realities, talking about the economy, and adequately put plans and measures in place to mitigate the negative consequences of subsidy removal on Nigerians in the short term. He also explains that the delay will have significant implications for the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act, which may require amendments. The LCCI recommends that government must actively engage all stakeholders on the implementation of the subsidy removal, detailing milestones that will be achieved with the proceeds from petrol subsidy removal, and providing short-term measures to mitigate its adverse effect. The president of Dangote Group, Mr. Aliko Dangote, is asking African countries to dismantle all barriers hindering free trade among them in order to achieve sustainable growth and development across the African continent. In a statement, Mr. Dangote expresses his commitment to the Pan-African conglomerate to tackle some economic challenges faced by Africa. According to him, the group has committed over $20 billion of investments in several key sectors of the economy. He adds that the investments aim to turn around Africa's economic fortunes for sustained growth through free trade and economic integration. And that's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Ayotunde.
Many thanks, Anne. The French Interior Minister says over hundreds of police officers have been injured in clashes across France with protesters angry at pension reforms. Gérald Darmanin says such a large number of police wounded was extremely rare, adding that 291 people had been arrested during the unrest. Here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Russia has launched a series of missiles at Ukrainian cities in the second pre-dawn attack in 3 days. Pavlorad, a logistics hub near the central city of Dnipro, was hit ahead of a much-anticipated counteroffensive by Ukraine. The strike sparked a major fire, destroying dozens of houses and wounding at least 34 people. Hours later, the air raid alert sounded across the country, with the capital Kyiv among the targets. Across the country, the Ukrainian army said it shot down 15 of the 18 cruise missiles that had been fired from Russia. Smoke was seen rising over Khartoum as the Sudan conflict showed no sign of easing. Local TV reported the dense plume of black smoke was near the Republican Palace in the capital. Both sides agreed on Sunday to extend a much violated humanitarian ceasefire that had been due to expire at midnight for a further 72 hours, in a move the RSF said was in response to international, regional and local calls. But fighting could be heard in Khartoum early on Monday, despite the supposed ceasefire extension, and the United Nations warned of a humanitarian breaking point as clashes between rival military forces entered a third week. American bank JP Morgan Chase is set to take over the troubled US bank First Republic in a deal brokered by regulators. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation confirmed in a statement that First Republic Bank had collapsed on Monday. Investment banking giant JP Morgan will take on all of the deposits and the majority of First Republic's assets. First Republic is the third US bank to collapse in recent months, which has prompted fears of a wider banking crisis.
In this case, you had a group of banks here that did not plan well for interest rate risk. They did not plan well for big growth, explosive growth. They didn't plan for what they should be planning for, and that's a liquidity event where you have more than ordinary numbers of withdrawals, especially given their levels of uninsured deposits. That's a problem. And so, the chickens have kind of come home to roost for all of these banks.
Clashes have erupted in Nantes in France as protesters marched across the western French city during Labor Day. French President Emmanuel Macron faced nationwide protests as he struggles to turn the page on a deeply unpopular increase in the retirement age that has unleashed a wave of social unrest. Riot police fired tear gas canisters after protesters threw projectiles. Protests were also underway in Rennes and a march in Paris. The former US President Donald Trump has arrived at Aberdeen Airport for a short trip to visit his golf courses in Scotland and Ireland. Trump, who has family roots from Lewis, an island off the northwestern tip of Scotland, owns 2 golf courses in Scotland. Mr. Trump, who launched his election campaign last November for the 2024 US presidential election, said he was visiting to see and inspect his properties in Scotland and Ireland. The trip comes weeks after Mr. Trump was charged with 34 felony counts in New York. And finally, thousands of devotees have gathered in India's southern Thrissur city to watch elephants and priests take part in Thrissur Puram, an annual Hindu festival popular for its elephant parade. Elephants carrying cutouts of Hindu gods and goddesses on their heads paraded at the Vadak Unathan temple as priests played musical instruments as devotees cheered. Thrissur Puram is celebrated on the day when the moon rises with the Puram star in the Malayalam calendar month of Medam, generally falling between April and May. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. Let's begin with the announcement that the Nigerian Women Football League this season's title decider will hold from May the 5th to the 12th at the Stephen Keshi Stadium in Asaba, Delta State. Delta, Confluence, Robo, Edo, Bayelsa Queens and Rivers Angels will battle for the league title. The winners will represent Nigeria at the African Women's Champions League qualifiers in August. Now, Arsenal will face a Chelsea side in free fall at the Emirates on Tuesday after losing all 5 league and cup games since Frank Lampard returned to become interim manager. Here's more and other sports news across the globe.
Arsenal hopes to keep title aspirations alive when they face rivals Chelsea in the London derby at the Emirates on Tuesday. Arsenal are in second place on 75 points. Behind leaders Manchester City will have a game on hand. But manager Mikel Arteta says the Gunners are fired up for the clash.
Now it's not in our hands. And what is in our hands is to win our games. That's what we're going to try to do. And the rest is down to City. I think it was a good reality check as well. In the way that they stepped up the level, we could not reach that level. But a reality check as well that you have stepped to that level for 10 months. So believe in what you do because you are so good as well.
Chelsea caretaker manager Frank Lampard concedes the Blues are low on confidence owing to their poor run of form, but challenges players to hold their lack of self-belief with hard work.
I think we have to put perspective on it and understand that we've got to try and work on all aspects as a club to get back to the feeling and the position of where we want to be, and it's not a given in this league, and there's a lot of work to do.
That's it on Sports News. I'm Jeffrey Zonges. Back to you, Tunde.
Many thanks, Jeffrey. And the main news again. Organized labor in Nigeria are seeking additional 5 years to retirement age and years of service as they mark the 2023 Workers' Day. Well, the call from labor, which was announced at this year's celebration in Abuja, expects workers to bow out at 65 or after 35 years of service. That's the news at 10 tonight. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. Have a good night.